Hello everyone, welcome to UCL Creativity in Technology webinar series. My name is Noya. This is the note that if you have any question during the webinar, please leave it in Q&A box. We will select and discuss your questions later in this talk. Today we have Dr. Iouri Belski here giving us a talk. Dr. Belski is a professor of engineering problem solving in Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, known as RMIT. His research covers cognitive foundations and practice of engineering problem solving. For instance, he has huge contributions in theory of inventive problem solving, TRIZ. Except for that, Dr. Belski has research and consulting expertise in design, creativity and design thinking, acquisition of expertise in engineering, and novel educational technologies. He has had industry consultancy experience on thinking and problem solving in Australia, Austria, Singapore, and the United States. Today, Dr. Belski will present part of his recent work, which explores the effect of general knowledge and ideation heuristics in engineering creativity. The first part of this webinar is a presentation. The second part is the Q&A. This webinar will last in 30 minutes, just in case it may extend for maximum 5 minutes. Now, let's welcome Dr. Belski.
For her invitation and reminding me of what I've actually done. I already forgot how much I've worked in creativity. Anyway, today I am gonna discuss a couple of issues which are related to general knowledge and ideation heuristics in engineering creativity. And let me start with acknowledgement. Sorry. Technology is technology. Let me try whether it will work now. You know that RMIT is located in Australia, which is in the state of Victoria. And we at RMIT would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land, present, future. I also, before I start, wish to acknowledge my cooperators or co-investigators, which you may see come from 6 countries and actually come from 11 universities. Without their help, I would be unable to present to you what I'm going to present to you today. Well, interesting. This particular slide, in essence, represents the goal of my talk. You might be aware of the componential model of creativity, which was proposed by TRIZ Amabile in 1983. Although the model is in its mid or actually even late 30s, the model is still considered as reasonably well explaining the creative performance. And what we discovered over the years looking at various experiments and surveys, that actually it seems that for engineering, this particular model requires an additional component. This is the additional component which it needs. In engineering, knowledge outside of the profession is really of importance in order to come up with creative ideas. Well, in order for us to be very, very clear on what I'm talking about, first of all, I give you the dictionary definition of general knowledge. Although we more or less in engineering mean, when we say general knowledge, we mean the knowledge from outside of our professional domain. Nonetheless, I'm only trying to say that I talk about the engineering profession. And for the engineering profession, as I said, it seems that this particular component is a necessary part of the model. Before I'll start presenting to you some evidence in support of what I mentioned as my goal, I wish to share with you the definition of creativity, which I believe applies specifically to the engineering profession. I need to be very, very clear that I agree with the researchers in creativity who believe that creativity is domain specific. And therefore, what I did a few years ago, I actually looked at the definition of creativity, which is based on the criteria of patentability and patent authorship, and actually formulated the definition for engineering creativity, which you actually see in this particular slide. And what I wish to highlight to you, that this definition, and it was to my surprise actually, contains a hint that in order to come up with a creative solution, an engineer needs to use a knowledge from outside of the discipline. Because if the idea is obvious to the expert from the discipline, it is no longer creative. Anyway, the goal and definitions are given. Let me show you some evidence. First comes from the experiment which we've conducted over a couple of years, and we engaged over 1,500 students from 6 countries in this experiment. Students were asked to come up with as many ideas as possible for the problem of removing lime deposit from pipes. What you see here is the slide which was shown to the control group. This slide was shown to the control group for 16 minutes. And although we had 3 experimental groups, what I'm showing to you today are only the results of 1 experimental group, because time is limited and it would be quite difficult for me within this short time to explain what happened with the other groups. This particular slide is a slide which was shown to one of the experimental groups for 2 minutes. And actually, the word which was embedded in the same slide as that for control group was changed every 2 minutes. And you see these 8 words which were shown for 2 minutes each to the students in the experimental group. Here at the top, it's mechanical, acoustic, chemical, electric, magnetic, intermolecular, and biological. In essence, these students were shown 8 words, so 8 prompts for 2 minutes each, and it was also 16 minutes. Well, students in neither of the groups were briefed on what is going to happen, and the experimental group was not trained in any heuristic. Well, here are the results of from the universities. 2 universities are in Australia and 3 universities are Czech Republic, Finland, and Russia, where the students of the first semester, first year engineering degree were involved. What I wish you to see here is that, interestingly, this experimental group, which we named the MedChemip group, in all countries outperformed in the number of ideas generated. These are the ideas generated. These are the numbers of students in the groups, and here is standard deviations. But basically, if we compared the performance of the experimental group, in all countries, the experimental groups proposed statistically significantly more ideas than the counterparts from the control group. And what we've also discovered, which was unexpected, that students from the Australia One University performed or proposed less ideas in each of the groups than equivalent groups from the other 4 universities. And the difference was, in both cases, both for control group and McCamick group, was statistically significant. What I need to say about universities, University Australia One, University in Czech Republic, Finland, and Russia are technical universities, and they are pretty similar in their standing. Australia 2 University is one of the leading Australian research universities. Well, when we discovered this particular discrepancy, that the students from Australia One University generated statistically significantly less ideas than their counterparts in other countries, we decided to dig into the reasons. And what we looked at the entry requirements into the university degree of engineering. As I said, the students were in their first semester of the engineering degree, therefore, logically, their knowledge was the knowledge they gained at school. At the bottom here, the red color indicates the prerequisites after graduation from school, which each university requires. Say, Australia One University only requires students to study maths in order to enter the degree. Australia 2, they need to study maths and some science. Over here, it can be physics, chemistry, and sometimes biology. Universities in Czech Republic, Finland, and Russia, they not only require students to study maths, physics, chemistry, and sometimes other sciences, but also require students to have threshold marks. Unless students actually achieve an appropriate level of a mark for mathematics, physics, and chemistry, they will not be allowed to sit the entry examinations. These particular universities require entry examinations in these particular subjects. Neither of the Australian universities have entry examinations. Basically, this analysis of ours suggested that the main reason for the lower performance of the students from the Australia One group is likely to be a lesser general knowledge they have. It means that they certainly had substantially less knowledge in science than students from these 3 universities, and most likely less scientific knowledge than students from Australia 2 University. Basically, as I'm trying to show you, here is a hint that actually general knowledge or knowledge in science in this particular case defines the creativity output. Let me move further. Well, after looking at the performance of the students of a first year, first semester, we actually asked ourselves, and how would the additional discipline knowledge change the performance? Therefore, we engaged students from Germany, and they came from semester 2 or semester 3 of engineering study, which means it's either 6 months or 1 year, more than those, and Italian master students who spent at least 4 more years at university than the students from an earlier study, and some of those students even worked in industry. Well, the probability that Italian students gain substantially more general knowledge or knowledge outside of profession is minimal, because I don't know how much do you know about engineering degrees, but engineering degrees are quite busy with specifically disciplined courses. Anyway, what you may see as highlighted in yellow, and I purposefully highlighted only European Union and Russian universities because of a similarity in their entry requirements. Additional discipline knowledge did not result in extra ideas. that none of the differences are statistically significant. What was interesting, though, technology, that if we compared again the difference between the control group and experimental group performance, it seems that these particular 8 prompts, which were shown to students, really resulted in statistically significant improvement of in the numbers of ideas generated by students. So basically, in each country, this difference between the ideas proposed by the control group and the chemic group were statistically significant. Well, what I'm trying to highlight with this particular study is that it seems that it is general knowledge, but not the discipline knowledge, which actually defines the number of ideas, which is number of creative ideas. And also that utilizing some prompts, which is a part of a heuristic, can actually change the number of ideas quite significantly. Well, here is a little bit of information from another study of ours, where we used, or we tried to convince management of companies which were on the list of Thomson Reuters 100 most innovative technology companies for at least 2 years out of the 3 to permit their staff to participate in the survey. We succeeded with some companies, and as a result, we got 46 engineering experts, which represented pretty big and well-known innovative corporations in the world. Well, here is the comparison of the responses of these 46 engineering experts to the statements on which knowledge or what is the most important for creative performance. And as you see here, it was nearly unilateral decision. You see the standard deviation for the statement of the general knowledge is the most important is really the smallest, plus the value of 8.4 out of 10 appeared to be statistically significantly more important than this one and that one. Again, what I'm trying to say here, that then we asked engineering experts, they actually stated that in their opinion, general knowledge, or it was actually stated for them, knowledge outside of the professional domain, is more important for creative performance than discipline knowledge, years of practice, and even creativity techniques. Although you see that creativity techniques are higher than years of practice and discipline knowledge. Moreover, here is another response of these engineers. They were asked, what is it they need to gain in order to further improve their creativity? And again, the general knowledge or knowledge outside of their profession comes first, and the creativity techniques or heuristics come second. Though this time, creativity techniques are also statistically significantly above the professional knowledge, as well as the general knowledge. Well, what again I'm trying to say here, that it is another hint from experts that actually, in order to be creative in engineering, they need knowledge outside of the profession, general knowledge, in the sense of a definition I've given. Well, in essence, what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to say that looking at 3 sources, that if we look at the patentability criteria, and whether you agree or disagree with the definition of creativity I've proposed, but the patentability criteria require the ideas to be not obvious to the experts in particular engineering discipline, which means that the idea must come from outside of the domain. Also, the experiments I showed you indicate that more science knowledge students had, the more ideas they proposed. And science knowledge in general is actually the general knowledge for an engineering, because engineers occupy a very, very narrow niche in their professions. And the third hint for the importance and the necessity of general knowledge to be accommodated into the model is the opinion of engineering experts. Because if we look at the model as it is, you see it's only knowledge about the domain which is in the current model as a component or subcomponent. And what I suggest us to consider, at least for engineering profession, is adding the general knowledge component to the picture. Because without the general knowledge component or knowledge from outside of the professional domain, it seems that it is unlikely that the engineers are capable of creating really great stuff. Moreover, from what you've seen, not a heuristic, but only a part of a heuristic where the 8 words came, it were simply prompts, were capable of enhancing idea generation performance by students statistically significantly. These 8 words come from a heuristic. They are only a part of a heuristic, but the heuristic were not taught. Therefore, another thing which I wish to highlight for engineering profession, that this particular subcomponent is also of importance. Therefore, well, at least engineering educators need to take notice of this and try to engage their students in learning some effective heuristics for engineering profession, and there are quite many. Well, this is what I wanted to share with you. Non Gujin, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Belski. I think thank you for sharing your research. I think as a psychology researcher for creativity, your research is very, very inspiring for me. Actually, I have a question here. So I don't know if I understand it correctly. So basically you argue that once you've got discipline knowledge to an extent, additional discipline knowledge didn't result in extra creative ideas. And now knowledge from outside of professional domain will increase the fluency, the number of creative ideas. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes, you do. It's at least what our research shows, that it's not only fluency, but also flexibility is up. I was unable to actually talk about what is known as flexibility, but we used the breadth of ideas instead of flexibility. And in a sense of flexibility of ideas, they also were statistically significantly above for the MATCHEMIP group than for the control group.
And another question is that, so considering the importance of the knowledge that outside of a specific domain, I think, so as a maybe layman for engineering, could you please give us an example for what do you mean by knowledge outside of the professional domain? So for instance, for people from electronic engineering, what is the knowledge that outside of their domain?
So I'm a representative of an electronics engineering profession, actually, and there is plentiful things around us which is not a part of our profession. Say, knowledge of chemical reactions, it means chemistry. We know just a bit of it in order to be certain how whatever is produced in electronics, but we don't know a huge bulk of it. The knowledge which is related to biology is extremely important, and more biology uh, is used, or biology principles and biological species are used in a sort of electronics-like applications. There are, for example, knowledge from domains where various thermal interactions occur. Unfortunately, engineering profession in the recent decades, maybe 2 or 3 decades, became too focused. What I mean is that if, say, 30 years ago, as an electronics engineer, my scope was very, very wide. Now electronics engineers who actually work in industry and also research, they have substantially narrower scope. And they actually put most of their time, and the universities are the same, in studying that particular narrow field. Anyway, what I'm saying, it means we need to look outside of the narrow fields and have more general knowledge. And in the engineering profession, it is a part of the
I think
creative
this is very, very like good example. At least for me, I know, I understand like what do you mean by the outside of the domain. What are the knowledge for the outside of the domain? And also, I have another question because you mentioned the heuristics. So you say like the general knowledge needs heuristics, basically implicit and explicit knowledge of heuristics. So can you please like give us some talk more about it? I think this is a very valuable like aspect of your research.
I expected numerous questions, and I prepared a couple of slides in case I'm asked about things. Your question about heuristics, I'm a specialist in heuristics which come from a theory of inventive problem solving. I'll probably give you a little bit more information on the matter in a sec, but here is a list of the heuristics, or simple heuristics, which can be embedded into university courses. For example, the 8 fields of McCamipp heuristic. I've just explained how we conducted our experiments when students were shown these 8 words, but in essence, this particular heuristic suggests to do the following. Say you have a problem to resolve, and this particular heuristic suggests you to actually ask yourself 8 questions. And the questions are, can this problem be resolved mechanically? Can this problem be resolved acoustically? Can it be resolved thermally, chemically, electrically, magnetically, intermolecularly, or biologically? Or in other words, can you use anything from biological surrounding in order to solve the problem or improve the situation? Now, the operator size time cost is another heuristic which recommends a user to consider the problem under 6 impossible conditions. Say you have a problem of some kind, and this particular heuristic suggests you to ask yourself the following questions. If whatever you needed to do, for example, was infinite in size, what would you do? If it were 0 in size, basically didn't occupy any space, what would you do? If you had infinite time to solve the problem, what would you do? If you had no time, what would you do? If you had all the monies on earth, what would you do? If you didn't have money or had very limited budget, what would you do? Basically, if this heuristic really helps to manually search the knowledge database, that this heuristic actually helps to try seeing the problem from different perspectives. It means it's a problem framing or problem finding here. Anyway, those heuristics are heuristics which we think are useful and can be learned by undergraduate students with their expertise. And the last set is that which can be used for by the postgraduate students. I only can say that at this point in time, some heuristics, those which are highlighted in red here, have educational materials which everyone can use. This was supported by our government Department of Education and Training, and whoever is interested may try to look at edisons21.com website, where you'll find materials for teaching and learning of these heuristics which are in red, and some templates and cheat sheets for students. And the last one, once I mentioned TRIZ, I simply wish to explain what is it. It is an English transliteration of a Russian acronym TRIZ, which in Russian stands for Theory of Inventive Problem Solving. It's a set of heuristics. Some of the heuristics are weak heuristics, some are strong heuristics, but it's a set of heuristics. And at the bottom of this slide, you see some companies which actually extensively use these heuristics, or TRIZ in general. Anyway, sorry for taking a long time to answer your question, but I hope at least I covered what you wanted me to cover.
I think this is, thank you very much, Dr. Belski. I think this is very valuable. Actually, we have audience, we have Paul, so actually he is a researcher in the innovation and creativity in crime and security. And Paul replied that, I think you have beaten me to it in coverage of TRIZ now, but I would say that focusing on contradictions, which I do in crime prevention problem solving, is a real aid to sharper address to the problems. So I think it's good if you have maybe you can have further communication about this. I think this is a very valuable contribution in the engineering creativity actually. And I have there is another question. It's also about the knowledge that outside of the domain. So we have an audience asking, with the regards to social science knowledge, do you think that kind of social science knowledge would also benefit the engineering? That kind of knowledge.
Certainly, it's we experimented with things which are probably have more influence on the engineering personnel at the bottom layer, but the social science, even music, in my opinion, are actually also of importance as a general knowledge for engineering profession, because the decisions which we make are not necessarily made logically. Quite often the decision is made because of a gut feeling, and the knowledge in social science and social logic, it means all these, is quite important for actually having a good or well-developed gut feeling. But anyway, I'm very positive, and I would love engineering students to actually study philosophy, to study psychology, because it's entirely different world, and often this different world helps to trigger the appropriate idea, or at least to trigger the direction to the appropriate idea in order to get something superbly creative.
I do agree with that. I think the social cognition and it's also consistent with your heuristic argument. If they learned some arts knowledge or some philosophy, psychology, it will increase, broaden their view actually, and they will have more divergent thinking, which this is how you define creativity.
Well, it's I purposefully didn't touch the issue of convergent and divergent thinking. I'm on the side that for engineering creativity, divergent thinking is the key. And actually, if you look at legal cases related to the it is very, very just decisions on the authorship are made on the basis on who came up with an idea. It was specifically the divergent path of thinking, because everything else by the judges, then they look at the authorship, patent authorship, is considered secondary. And unless the idea comes, nothing can be created. At least I'm not generalizing this for all disciplines. I only look at the engineering field, and I only can say with certainty that in engineering field, in my view, it is the divergent thinking which is the key for creativity, not the convergent thinking.
Thank you very much. So actually you think, so first the engineering creativity is a domain specific thing, and then the divergent thinking is the key thing for engineering creativity.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
It's I tried to make it clear over here. It is certainly domain specific, and I'm not the only one. There are quite a few really world level scholars in general creativity who came up with numerous pieces of evidence of not transferability of, for example, creative performance from one domain to another one, not transferability of creativity training, which was done in one domain to another domain, which is quite close to the original domain. It means that there are plenty of evidence that it is domain specific. Moreover, it means how would you compare Picasso and Edison? It means it's, can you use exactly the same criteria to compare the paintings of Picasso with innovations of Edison? Well, at least it's hard, or maybe my cognitive abilities are not that strong to actually see the very, very close equivalence.
So actually you think at least from the perspective of the measurement and the criteria, the engineering creativity is definitely different from the, for instance, art creativity.
Yeah.
So yes, I think this is a very important thing to keep in mind for the creativity researchers as well. So we need to know that really like think about, does these two things comparable, and how do we like deal with it if they are in the same study? So I think that's very important. Thank you very much, Dr. Belski. Thank you very much for your time. I think it's quite late at your time zone.
Well, it is 20 minutes to 11 p.m.
Oh, thank you.
Well, not yet a midnight, no. Not yet tomorrow. If it were tomorrow, we would be certainly ahead of London. We are ahead of London, but not that much. It's not the future yet.
Yeah. If we have time, I do want to continue this discussion till tomorrow, but I will like leave you to like have a great evening, and thank you very, very much for your time today. It's really, really, you covered like many different things actually, even though it's from a single, like not single, but just some research findings, but definitely you cover creativity from different perspectives already.
Noya, thank you very much for your invitation. It is a pleasure always to share my ideas with others, and I will be very happy if someone who disagrees or agrees emailed me their disagreement or agreement. In the end, when we research in any field, we propose hypotheses, we try to convince others that things are right, but whether it is right or not, it's actually often very, very hard to say. Nonetheless, I tried to make my point that the evidence we collected so far indicates that for engineering profession, we need to add the knowledge from outside of a professional domain to the model, and also to seriously consider the importance of ideation heuristics.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noya. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope that you'll have a great day in London, and we'll have a warm night here in Melbourne, although it is quite cold. You know that we are in the winter time. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.